We live in a world where wisdom is often overlooked and sometimes even disregarded, but there are certain signs that make it evident. When wisdom is absent, we all know that wisdom shapes the lives of great individuals. It guides decisions, builds strength, and leads us down paths of greatness. And yet there are some who walk through life without this wisdom, making choices that hinder their growth and limit their potential. When we talk about the signs of a foolish woman, we aren't talking about being harsh or judgmental. We're simply pointing out traits that lead to self-destruction and missed opportunities. It's crucial to recognize these signs, not to condemn, but to help. Understanding these signs allows us to turn around and grow. It empowers us to make better choices, to change old patterns, and to choose a life full of purpose, wisdom, and impact. It's about learning the lessons, growing in strength, and taking control of your own destiny. So let us examine these signs, not out of judgment, but out of love and a desire to help each other rise to the heights we were meant to reach. When we think about the power of a woman, we often forget that it starts with the strength she has to build within herself. Yet many women unknowingly sabotage their own success, their peace, their dreams, and even their happiness. Self-sabotage is a hidden enemy creeping in quietly and often unnoticed. It is a destructive force that undermines the very potential that lies within. Recognizing self-sabotage is not just about identifying actions that hold you back. It's about understanding the patterns of thinking and behaving that trap you in cycles of failure and regret. A foolish woman is one who allows fear, doubt, and insecurity to take the reins of her life. These negative emotions lead to choices that hurt rather than help her progress. She may set goals, dream big, and desire success, but she often finds herself on a path of self-destruction. It can be subtle. Things like procrastination, avoiding difficult conversations, or settling for less than she deserves. It can also be more obvious, like a consistent pattern of running away from responsibility or self-doubt that makes her question her own worth and potential. Every time she lets the opportunity slip by or allows fear to dictate her actions, she's sabotaging her chance to grow, to evolve, and to live a life of purpose. It begins in the mind with thoughts that plant seeds of doubt. The woman who continuously doubts her abilities, who second-guesses her worth, is already halfway down the path to sabotaging her own success. These thoughts paralyze her. She believes she is not good enough, not strong enough, or not capable of achieving her dreams. She convinces herself that the world is against her, that she is not equipped for the challenges ahead. The longer she holds on to this mindset, the further she drifts from her true potential. But it doesn't end with just thoughts. These doubts lead to actions or the lack of them. A foolish woman may set goals, but she may not take the necessary steps to pursue them. She might procrastinate, waiting for the right moment or for someone else to give her permission to move forward. She may avoid taking risks, even when those risks are the very thing she needs to break free from the chains of her limiting beliefs. Instead of pushing herself to grow and take on new challenges, she stays in the comfort zone of familiarity, never stretching beyond what she already knows. In doing so, she sabotages her progress and confines herself to a life of mediocrity. Another form of self-sabotage is the tendency to settle. Too often, women settle for less than they deserve, whether it's in relationships, careers, or personal expectations. They may stay in toxic relationships, believing they cannot do better or that they do not deserve more. They may hold on to unhealthy habits, settling for a life of dissatisfaction because they believe change is impossible. Settling for less isn't just about lowering standards. It's about believing that greatness is not for you. It's accepting the status quo when you were meant for so much more. Furthermore, a foolish woman might have a tendency to ignore her own needs. She may neglect her physical, emotional, or spiritual well-being in the name of pleasing others. She may pour all her energy into caring for those around her, but never take the time to nurture herself. She may sacrifice her peace, her health, and her dreams for the sake of others, only to find herself exhausted and empty. This pattern of self-neglect leaves her vulnerable to burnout, frustration, and a sense of lost purpose. By failing to care for herself, she fails to recognize that her own well-being is the foundation upon which everything else rests. There is also a sabotaging tendency to avoid facing uncomfortable truth. A woman who refuses to confront the areas in her life that need change will remain stuck. She may avoid hard conversations or sweep issues under the rug because it's easier to ignore them than to face them head-on. But by doing so, she prevents herself from growing. She stays in relationships that drain her, or continues to make the same poor decisions because she avoids the uncomfortable but necessary work of self-reflection and change. This is a cycle that can continue for years, keeping her from living a life of authenticity and fulfillment. The key to breaking free from self-sabotage is recognizing it for what it is, an enemy to your growth, a barrier to the abundant life you were meant to live. Once you acknowledge the ways you've been undermining your own success, you can begin to change. The first step is changing your thinking. You need to stop believing the lies that tell you you're not enough. You must silence the voice that says you can't. Instead, begin to believe that you are capable, that you are worthy, and that you are strong enough to overcome the obstacles in your way. Taking action is the next crucial step. You can't just think about change, you must act on it. Small steps add up to big changes. Start by setting clear, achievable goals, and then commit to taking consistent action to reach them. Don't allow fear to stop you. Instead, take risks. Make decisions that challenge you and push you beyond what you think is possible. You must be willing to take the first step even when you're not sure what's ahead, trusting that God will guide you along the way. It's also vital to set boundaries and learn to prioritize your needs. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's necessary for your well-being. Set aside time for rest, for reflection, and for growth. Invest in your physical, emotional, and spiritual health. Because when you are strong in these areas, you can give your best to the world around you. Recognizing and overcoming self-sabotage isn't easy, but it's worth it. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to grow. But when you break free from the cycle of self-sabotage, you will step into the life of purpose and impact that you were meant to lead. You will become the woman you were created to be, strong, capable, and unstoppable in the pursuit of your dreams. Do not let self-sabotage steal your future. Embrace the power of self-awareness and take hold of the life that awaits you. The best is yet to come. There is something precious about wisdom, something that is far more valuable than the fleeting desires and shallow satisfactions that surround us every day. Wisdom is not a gift that can be bought or borrowed. It is earned over time through experience, patience, and a deep understanding of life's deeper truths. Yet, despite its value, there are many who ignore wisdom, choosing instead to follow their impulses or the easy way out. She can stop running from wisdom and start embracing it, learning to make decisions that reflect maturity, growth, and a deep understanding of her own worth and purpose. To ignore wisdom is to ignore the chance to live a life full of peace, success, and fulfillment. True wisdom begins with humility. It starts with recognizing that we do not have all the answers, that we need guidance, and that we must rely on others, whether it's wise mentors, God's truth, or our own inner discernment. A wise woman is one who seeks knowledge, reflects on her experiences, and learns from them. She doesn't fear making mistakes, but she also doesn't repeat them. She recognizes that each decision she makes has consequences, and that those consequences will either lead her closer to her dreams or further away from them. She understands that the best decisions are those made with patience, thoughtfulness, and wisdom, rather than quick emotional reactions. A wise woman also knows that wisdom doesn't come just from books or the advice of others. It comes from experience, the lessons learned through trial and error, through challenges faced, and through the mistakes she has made. But wisdom is also something that can be cultivated daily. It comes from staying grounded, staying true to one's values, and choosing paths that align with a higher purpose. It comes from choosing courage over fear, discipline over indulgence, and patience over impatience. It's time to stop ignoring wisdom. It's time to begin making decisions that reflect a mature, thoughtful approach to life. A woman who seeks wisdom and listens to it will be able to build a life that is not just full of success, but full of peace and joy as well. When she chooses wisdom over her fleeting desires, she will find herself on a path that leads to fulfillment, purpose, and the true strength that comes from making wise choices. The decision is yours. Choose wisdom today and walk the path that leads to a future filled with grace, strength, and power. There's a powerful truth that stands tall and undeniable, one that resonates through the lives of countless individuals. The trap of unhealthy relationships is real, and it is often the unwise who fall prey to its allure. The temptation to stay in toxic relationships despite the warning signs and inner turmoil is something that many of us face. This is not just about romantic entanglements. It encompasses friendships, family dynamics, and professional relationships as well. It's a challenge that requires both discernment and strength to overcome. For a woman, especially one who is strong, capable, and full of promise, stepping into unhealthy relationships can be one of the most destructive things she does in her life. The first thing to recognize is that unhealthy relationships don't always start that way. They don't always appear dangerous or harmful at first. In fact, many of the most toxic relationships begin with the semblance of affection, charm, or comfort. It might be the attention, the promises, or the hopes for a better future that draws a person in. The fool, however, is often deceived by these superficial traits and ignores the deeper, more telling signs. A wise woman knows that love and respect must be mutual, not one-sided. She understands that healthy relationships are built on trust, integrity, and truth, not manipulation, control, or fear. The unwise woman, however, might overlook the red flags. She might justify a partner's behavior because she believes in their potential or because she is afraid to be alone. The trap is set when she begins to convince herself that love is about sacrifice, about changing herself to meet the needs of the other person, even at the expense of her own well-being. The danger lies in ignoring the truth of what's happening, convincing herself that things will get better or that she can somehow change the situation. This mindset opens the door to deeper dysfunction. The more a person ignores the reality of unhealthy behavior, the more it begins to feel like the new normal. But deep down, there is always a nagging sense of discomfort, a feeling that something isn't right. The emotional toll that these relationships take is undeniable. Constant emotional strain, uncertainty, and distress become the foundation of the relationship. Instead of feeling supported, loved, and nurtured, the person in the toxic relationship begins to feel drained, unimportant, and misunderstood. To doubt her own value and to second-guess her own decisions. She might find herself trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, thinking that she's not enough or that she deserves the mistreatment she's receiving. This is where the danger lies, in the slow erosion of confidence, dignity, and self-respect. The danger is even more profound when it comes to romantic relationships. Love, in its truest form, is supposed to build you up, to lift you higher, to challenge you in ways that make you a better person, but unhealthy love does the opposite. It breaks you down, it diminishes your spirit, and it leads you away from the person you are meant to become. The fool in a toxic relationship will often find herself drowning in false promises, empty words, and the false hope that things will one day change, 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 change. She might become so attached to the idea of what the relationship could be that she neglects to see the reality of what it truly is. The truth is that if someone truly loved you, they would never intentionally harm you. They would never seek to control, belittle, or manipulate you. Love is not about power, it's about respect, understanding, and sacrifice on both sides. The wise woman, on the other hand, knows her worth. She understands that love should never come at the cost of her peace or dignity. She will not tolerate being treated with disrespect, and she won't sacrifice her happiness for someone who is unwilling to love her in the way she deserves. She knows when to walk away from toxic situations, even when it's painful. The process of leaving a toxic relationship is not an easy one. It's often full of heartache, confusion, and even fear of the unknown. But the wise woman understands that true freedom and peace come when she steps away from the chaos of unhealthy relationships. She trusts that God has better plans for her, plans that involve growth, peace, and joy. And she won't settle for less than that. Unhealthy relationships often come with a sense of entitlement where one person expects the other to give endlessly without regard for their own needs or boundaries. The unwise woman might allow herself to be consumed by this one-sided dynamic, constantly giving and sacrificing with little to show for it except exhaustion, frustration, and unfulfilled promises. She becomes so consumed with trying to make things work that she loses sight of her own needs and desires. She might feel guilty for wanting more love, more respect, more consideration, and she may even begin to feel that she doesn't deserve these, 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 she doesn't deserve these things, 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 She doesn't deserve these things. 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 This is the trap of unhealthy relationships. It tricks you into believing that you are the problem, that your desires are unreasonable, and that you must continue to sacrifice for the sake of someone else's happiness. When a woman chooses to break free from the toxic relationship, she opens the door to healing. This is not an instant process. Healing from the damage of unhealthy relationships takes time, patience, and a willingness to rediscover who you are outside of the relationship. It takes courage to rebuild your sense of self-worth, to reclaim your peace, and to trust again. But it is a necessary journey for growth. It is in the process of healing that a woman truly comes to understand her worth. She learns that her value is not determined by the approval of others, but by the love and respect she has for herself. As she heals, she becomes stronger, wiser, and more prepared to build healthy, fulfilling relationships in the future. The warning here is clear. The trap of unhealthy relationships is one that can steal your joy, your peace, and your sense of self. It is a trap that, if left unchecked, can leave scars that last a lifetime. But the power to break free from this trap lies within you. The moment you recognize the signs of an unhealthy relationship, the moment you choose to walk away, you begin to take control of your life. You begin to choose the peace and the happiness you deserve. And in doing so, you allow yourself to live in the fullness of what God has for you. A life filled with love, joy, and healthy, life-giving relationships. A wise person understands that growth is not a luxury but a necessity. To stay stagnant, to refuse to move forward, is to deny the very essence of what it means to be alive. Abandoning personal growth is not just a failure. It's a form of self-sabotage that will keep you from reaching the potential that God has placed within you. Stagnation in all its forms is a dangerous trap that can lead to complacency, apathy, and even despair. And yet, so many fall into this trap, choosing to remain where they are rather than striving to become more. When a person stops growing, they stop learning. They stop challenging themselves, and they stop pursuing the things that will stretch their minds, hearts, and spirits. This is where foolishness creeps in. For the one who refuses to grow, life becomes about merely existing, not thriving. The Bible speaks of the importance of running the race, of pressing forward, of growing in wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. These are not just suggestions, but commandments that lead us toward a fuller, richer life. To abandon this pursuit is to abandon the purpose that we were created for. The fooled in their refusal to grow begins to accept the status quo. They become comfortable in their ignorance, indifferent to the possibility of becoming more than they are. They stop seeking, stop asking questions, and stop striving toward excellence. This is the root of stagnation, the idea that where you are right now is good enough, that growth is unnecessary. But this mindset leads to a dull and unfulfilled existence. God has created us to be continually evolving, always moving forward in faith, always pursuing a deeper relationship with Him and a better understanding of His will. Consider the many aspects of personal growth: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. To abandon any of these areas of growth is to neglect your holistic well-being. If you stop growing spiritually, you risk becoming disconnected from God. You stop seeking His guidance, you stop deepening your faith, and you stop allowing Him to shape you into the person He created you to be. A person who is not growing spiritually becomes numb to the work of the Holy Spirit, and soon they find themselves drifting farther away from the very source of life. Mental growth is just as important. The mind that refuses to be challenged is a mind that begins to wither. Stagnation in your thoughts leads to limited perspectives, narrow views, and an inability to adapt to the ever-changing world around you. A person who isn't growing intellectually can easily become trapped in outdated ways of thinking, holding on to beliefs or practices that no longer serve them. They become afraid of change, afraid of learning new things, and afraid of the unknown. But the wise person knows that knowledge is power and that the pursuit of wisdom is an ongoing journey. Emotionally, growth is equally important. A person who abandons emotional growth remains stuck in patterns of behavior that hinder their relationships, their peace, and their ability to thrive. Emotional growth involves learning to manage your feelings, understanding how to respond to life's challenges with grace and strength, and developing the ability to connect with others in meaningful ways. If you refuse to grow emotionally, you risk becoming bitter, resentful, or disconnected from the people around you. You lose the capacity for empathy, and you miss out on the beauty of deep, authentic relationships. And let's not forget about physical growth. If you abandon your health, your body will begin to deteriorate. We are entrusted with our physical bodies, and neglecting them is a form of foolishness. Eating poorly, avoiding exercise, and ignoring your well-being will eventually take its toll. But when you commit to taking care of your body, you increase your energy, your vitality, and your ability to serve others. Just as our minds and spirits need attention, so too do our bodies. Stagnation in any of these areas of life is a sign of foolishness, for it reveals a lack of care, a lack of awareness, and a lack of purpose. The consequences of abandoning personal growth are profound. A person who refuses to grow lives in the past, constantly dragging the weight of old wounds, old mistakes, and old patterns of thinking. They remain trapped in cycles of regret and resentment, unable to move forward. They lose sight of their future, their potential, and the calling that God has placed on their life. The fool becomes someone who is disconnected from their own dreams, their own desires, and ultimately from God's plan for them. But growth, my friends, brings life. It breathes fresh air into every corner of our being. It opens doors we didn't even know existed, and it shows us a future filled with possibility. Growth is a choice, a decision we make every day to rise above mediocrity, to push through discomfort, and to embrace the challenge of becoming more than we are. It's about setting goals, making changes, and committing to the process of transformation. It's about allowing God to shape us and mold us into the people we are meant to be. Never stagnant, always moving forward. There is a danger in complacency, a danger in refusing to grow, but there is also great power in embracing the challenge of personal growth. When you commit to growth, you open the door to a new chapter of your life. You discover new strengths you never knew you had. You begin to see the world through a clearer lens, one that reveals new opportunities, new relations to others. You begin to step into the fullness of your potential, no longer held back by fear, doubt, or the past. And most importantly, you draw closer to the person God has created you to be. A person who is constantly growing, constantly learning, and constantly moving toward a brighter, more fulfilling future. It's time to stop accepting stagnation as the norm. It's time to recognize that personal growth is not an option, it's a necessity. The person who refuses to grow is the person who abandons the opportunity to live fully, to experience the richness of life, and to fulfill the purpose for which they were created. Don't let that person be you. Embrace the challenge of growth, and in doing so, you will step into a life that is full of promise, hope, and endless possibility. God is waiting to lead you into that life. Will you follow? There is something powerful and profound in the simple understanding that each person is created with immense value. It's a truth we cannot ignore or overlook, yet many people fall into the trap of failing to recognize their own worth. To overlook your self-worth is like choosing to ignore the very essence of your being, the qualities and gifts that God has placed inside you. It's a choice that leads to a life of dissatisfaction, insecurities. When you fail to value yourself, you rob yourself of the potential to live fully in the calling that God has set before you. Your self-worth is not determined by the opinions of others, by your mistakes, or by your shortcomings. It is anchored in something much deeper, your identity in Christ. God sees you as precious and beloved, uniquely designed with purpose. When you choose to overlook your worth, you are essentially rejecting the truth of who you are in His eyes. You begin to see yourself through a distorted lens, focusing on what is lacking or imperfect, rather than embracing the fullness of who God made you to be. The consequence of failing to value yourself is far-reaching. It seeps into every aspect of your life, starting with how you see and treat yourself. When you don't recognize your worth, you allow others to treat you in ways that don't reflect the respect and love you deserve. You may find yourself in unhealthy relationships, tolerating behavior that is hurtful or dismissive because you don't believe you deserve anything better. But here's the truth, you do. You were created for more than just surviving through life. You were meant to thrive, to live with purpose and passion, and to experience the fullness of God's love. Your self-worth affects every decision you make. It influences the choices you make in relationships, in your career, in your health, and in your spiritual life. When you value yourself, you set higher standards for what you allow into your life. You begin to make decisions that align with your God-given potential, rather than settling for what is easy or comfortable. A person who knows their worth walks with confidence and authority, making decisions that honor both themselves and God. They seek relationships that are built on mutual respect, kindness, and love, not ones that drain or demean them. But when you fail to value yourself, you settle for less. You begin to accept situations and relationships that don't align with the greatness within you. You allow fear, insecurity, and doubt to cloud your judgment, and you make choices that ultimately leave you feeling unfulfilled. You may stay in toxic environments, whether in work or relationships, because you don't believe you deserve better. The sad reality is that by overlooking your self-worth, you start to believe the lie that you are not worthy of happiness, peace, or success. One of the most powerful things you can do in your life is to recognize your worth, to embrace the truth that you are fearfully and wonderfully made by God. This recognition doesn't come from pride or arrogance, but from understanding that your value is not based on external factors. It's not based on what you've achieved, what you own, or how others see you. Your worth is intrinsic. It is who you are at the deepest level, and it is rooted in God's love for you. When you recognize your worth, you begin to treat yourself with the respect and care that God intended for you. You stop chasing after approval or validation from others because you already know that you are enough. Overlooking your self-worth can also lead to a lack of self-care. When you fail to value yourself, you neglect your own well-being. You may prioritize the needs of others over your own, constantly giving without replenishing yourself. This leads to burnout, exhaustion, and a deep sense of emptiness. God calls us to love others as we love ourselves. This means that caring for yourself is not selfish, necessary. When you value yourself, you make choices that support your health, your growth, and your peace. You recognize the importance of rest, of setting boundaries, and of nourishing your body and soul. By valuing yourself, you are better equipped to love and serve others. The consequence of failing to value yourself extends beyond personal relationships and self-care. It affects how you approach life's challenges. When you don't recognize your own worth, you lack the confidence to face difficulties with resilience and strength. You may shy away from opportunities, convinced that you're not capable or deserving of success. But when you understand your worth, you step into each challenge with the assurance that you have the ability, the strength, and the wisdom to overcome. Your self-worth is the foundation upon which you build your faith, your purpose, and your success. Without it, you will constantly struggle to believe in your potential. In a world that often devalues individuals, it's easy to lose sight of your worth. Society may try to define your value based on superficial standards, your appearance, your accomplishments, your social status. But these things don't define you. Your worth is not defined by the world's standards, but by God's eternal love for you. He sees you as his beloved child. Nothing you do or fail to do can change that. When you understand this, you begin to see yourself through his eyes with a sense of worth and dignity that is unshakable. To overlook your self-worth is to ignore the incredible purpose God has for your life. He has called you to walk in the fullness of his love, to live a life of significance, and to become all that he has created you to be. Don't let the world's lies or your own insecurities tell you otherwise. You are worthy. You are enough. When you begin to embrace this truth, your life will be transformed. You will step into your destiny with confidence and grace, knowing that you are deeply loved and incredibly valuable. God has a plan for your life, and it begins with you recognizing and valuing the precious person he has made you to be. As we come to the close of this reflection, remember this. Your worth is not dependent on the approval of others or the validation from society. It is rooted in something far greater, your identity as a beloved child of God. When you embrace the truth of your self-worth, you allow yourself to step into the fullness of the life he has called you to. It's not about arrogance or pride. It's about acknowledging the incredible potential within you, a potential placed there by the Creator himself. By recognizing your worth, you begin to make choices that honor who you are and align with the purpose God has set before you. You begin to walk confidently in the path he has for you, unafraid to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to prioritize what truly matters. Never forget that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your worth is intrinsic, unshakable, and eternal. So I encourage you today, don't overlook the precious value that resides within you. Embrace it, nurture it, and let it guide you as you step into the incredible life that God has prepared for you. Thank you for listening, and may you always walk in the confidence of knowing your true worth